Hello everybody and welcome to the latest agenda on the Liverpool Echo Blood Red channel. Myself, Sean Bradbury, hosting today, and with me I have Paul Gorst. Gorst, the international break, how's it treating you?
We're getting there, aren't we? What are we into now? Tuesday afternoon, slowly but surely getting closer towards Friday when Jurgen Klopp returns for his press conference. That is the magical barrier that I'm hoping to hit in the next couple of days.
The light is there at the end of the tunnel, isn't it? It feels like we're over halfway now. We're pulling together and getting through this as a newsroom and as a fan base, I'd say. Well, what you may have seen on the Echo website this week, and we've taken the opportunity in the international break as the end of the decade approaches, is to do lots of content around goal of the decade, player of the decade, moment of the decade, all sorts, which has been going on the website each day this week for Reds and been well read. Caused lots of debate, so it's been some good stuff there. This agenda is going to be along similar lines, but it's something that we didn't cover in a piece, not yet at least, although Gorsty's got something up his sleeve. But one thing we didn't do was a player that's defined the decade, because obviously it's been quite a tumultuous 10 years for the Reds and an incredible journey, obviously, which has seen them reach a very, very different place to where they started it back in 2010. And we put together, myself and Gorsty, six possible candidates who we think could be the player who, in a certain way, has kind of come to define this decade. So we'll run through them and then see if we can kind of agree on one who we reckon is the man. We can congratulate as being Mr. 2010s. So we'll start with candidate number one, Philippe Coutinho, who obviously goes all the way back to the Rodgers era, went on to play more than 200 games for the Reds and score 54 goals. Don't think he actually won anything, did he? But when you consider his impact and what he signed for, what he left for, what he allowed the squad to how the squad transformed with the revenue that he brought in, he's got to be a contender. Very
much so. I think he's the archetypal Moneyball signing, isn't he, for Fenway Sports Group, who initially were taking that kind of baseball, basically the model of value and worth that was so successful in baseball with Billy Beane at Oakland Athletics, I think. So successful, in fact, that he actually made a film about it, didn't he? It was a way of unearthing talent at fairly low prices and polishing them and basically improving them to a point where they're able to be sold at huge profits. And Philippe Coutinho just comes into that perfectly, doesn't he? He signed for around about 8 million, was it, in January 2013, and it was a little bit of an unknown quantity. He had a loan spell at Espanyol, which obviously not quite fulfilling his potential at Inter Milan, and Brendan Rodgers basically got to work with him, and almost instantly you could see why there was so much excitement around this player. Pretty much plays in a similar type of way to the same way he does now, but he does it as an elite performer now, doesn't he? Did it for Liverpool for so long, and Barcelona, okay, it didn't quite work out there, but he's moved to Bayern Munich. But yeah, I'd say he was the perfect Moneyball signing for Fenway Sports Group, for bringing him into the club for 8 million, selling for 142 million 5 years later. Okay, he didn't win anything with Liverpool, but he was undoubtedly one of their best players when he was sold. Liverpool didn't want to sell him, did they? Jurgen Klopp certainly didn't. So he was sold on for such a huge fee that it enabled Liverpool to kind of reinvest that, and maybe Liverpool wouldn't have been able to have brought Virgil Van Dyck and Alisson Becker to the club without him. So his whole Liverpool story was huge, really, over the last decade.
I think he's going to be hard to beat, but we'll consider our other contenders. Second one will be Jordan Henderson, obviously captain of the club for a fair while. One of a rare few who've been able to say they can lift their European Cup, lifted that Champions League trophy back in June. I guess with him, Gorsty, it's kind of a case of he's almost ebbed and flowed with the fortunes of the team in the past decade under FSG. He's had his highs, he's had his lows. There's been times where it's been difficult for him on the pitch and he's maybe been underappreciated. Some would argue rightly, others would argue wrongly, but he's come out strongly since being one of those Damien Comolli signings, and initially kind of being not written off as such by the fan base, but there's certainly having a lot of questions asked about him.
Yeah, I think the list that we're talking about here now aren't necessarily the best players. It's kind of the players who have come to represent the decade almost, and I wouldn't say Jordan Henderson's the best by far. I mean, I think quite a lot of people would agree with that. He's the captain, and there are certain reasons why he has the armband, but he's not the best player at Liverpool. But I suppose, in a way, he has come to kind of defined the FSG era in a way. There's only 6 players who've made 250 Premier League appearances for Liverpool. He's one of them, and he's the only one who's done it this decade. So that just kind of shows how much he's been used over the last 10 years. He signed from Sunderland in 2011 for around about 16 million. Player with plenty of potential at the time, but one who was written off by a few at certain points of his Liverpool career, even written off by Brendan Rodgers, who obviously tried to sell him to Fulham at the time. And he's just fought back time and time again, proved so many people wrong, took the armband off Steven Gerrard, which is such a difficult task to begin with, and ended up becoming a European Cup winning captain. So you could write so much and say so much about Jordan Henderson. He's not the best Liverpool player of the last 10 years, but I think you'd have a fair shout to say he's someone who has defined this decade.
Third candidate then, who I guess was probably arguably the first major signing of the Klopp era. So we're getting into the back end of the decade when FSG really started to get into the swing of things. He's now been here for 3.5 seasons and has become one of the most threatening players in world football. Is Sadio Mane? Would he have a case, or maybe arrived a little bit too late to be a top candidate?
I'd say he's got a case. I think he's someone who he transformed Liverpool's attack, didn't he? When he first joined from Southampton, gave it so much speed that was kind of missing at the time. Yeah. And I think he's adjusted to a position on the left of that front three so well. So obviously he was Liverpool's star man on the right of the front three in his first season, and Mohamed Salah's arrival meant that he was shunted out onto the left, and that hasn't hindered him at all. And if anything, he's got better since he's moved over to the left. Now you're looking at him being a Premier League Golden Boot winner alongside Salah and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang last season. So important to Liverpool. Such a fantastic player to watch. So skillful, so fast. He can score goals. Left foot, right foot. Alongside Salah and Firmino, for me, the best front three in world football. And maybe I think he is someone who he was the catalyst, shall we say, for this new look attacking Liverpool lineup that we see now. And he'd have a shout, I'd say, yeah. 3 more contenders, all current players, all absolute top stars. Roberto Firmino's the next one. Obviously a man who fits into this Liverpool team in such a special way and makes the attack tick. And he was an infamous transfer committee signing all the way back in 2015. And I guess he's an interesting one because he came in under, I guess, the winter of the Rodgers era, inherited by Klopp, but then went on to become one of Klopp's key men. So he unites the two managerial reigns in quite a unique way. He does, and I suppose he kind of encapsulates both, because he wasn't really justifying his price tag and the excitement that surrounded his transfer under Brendan Rodgers. Okay, he will argue that he was played out of position at certain points, and I think that's a fair case to make, because no one really knew where he fitted in. Some suggested he was an attacking midfielder. Some thought he might have been a centre forward. He ended up playing left wing back one game at Old Trafford, I seem to remember. But it was Klopp's arrival, wasn't it, that really kick-started his Liverpool career. He basically just stuck him up as a number 9 when Daniel Sturridge, his injury problems meant that he couldn't be relied upon. So Klopp turned Firmino into a number 9, and he hasn't really looked back since, has he? He's not the most prolific of centre forwards that you'll find across Europe, but in terms of importance to the overall game plan for Liverpool, the way they play with that front three with the pace and eye for goal either side of him in Mane and Salah, he's just so important, such a clever player, so creative, and does chip in with his fair amount of goals as well. So, what a player he's been for Liverpool for the last 4 years under Jurgen Klopp. So important to this Liverpool team, and it's difficult to think if he wasn't there, who would replace him as Liverpool's number 9, because as I say, his style and his way of playing is just so crucial to how Liverpool operates as a team.
So 2 final candidates. Virgil van Dijk, I think, obviously hasn't been around at the club as long as any of the other candidates. Well, albeit Coutinho no longer here, but Henderson, Mane, Firmino been around a lot longer. But as a symbol of what Liverpool have become in this past decade and what they've been able to achieve, and I guess shell out as well, £75 million that you wouldn't have seen that happening back in 2010. He's got to be in the argument at least, given all that.
Definitely, and I think if I had to pick one, as the kind of symbol of the decade, if you like, it probably would be Virgil van Dijk. I mean, we've talked about him so much over the last 18 months, coming up towards 2 years. Best defender in the world, unquestionably. Could very well win the Ballon d'Or in 2 weeks' time. Unheard of for the defender. Well, since Fabio Cannavaro's 2006, after he won the World Cup with Italy. Champions League winner, Champions League finalist within 6 months of his arrival. Liverpool's most expensive player of all time. Justified it, no question. What can you say about him? He's just an absolute colossus at the back. He's virtually overnight transformed Liverpool's defence from one that was it was the Achilles heel, wasn't it, of the Liverpool team under Klopp, and it's become the real strong point. So a lot of that is down to just how good he's been, and as I mentioned on a podcast the other day, I think Liverpool have never had a Ballon d'Or winner. Michael Owen did win the Ballon d'Or when it was recognised as the European Footballer of the Year in 2001. Kenny Dalglish, I think, finished second in 83 or 84 to Michel Platini, but Liverpool have never actually had or been able to boast having the best player in the world in their ranks, which is incredible, really, for the success that the club have had. But if Van Dijk does pick up that golden ball on December the 2nd in Paris, it would just be another rubber stamp for how far this Liverpool team have come under Jurgen Klopp. So I think probably out of all the players that we're naming, I probably would say he'd be the first choice.
It's interesting, yeah. I get the symbolic argument there, especially if he does go on to win the Ballon d'Or. And then lastly, a word for Alisson, who I guess it's similar arguments in terms of transformative effect on the defence and his elite level in world football. I mean, like you said about Van Dijk, you could argue Alisson's the best keeper in the world, and there'd be many who disagree. A reflection of Liverpool's spending power as well, and arguably a problem position in some respects, certainly in recent years, and he's addressed a lot of things, and he'd throw his hat in the ring as well.
Yeah, in terms of that specialist position, I don't think I've seen a goalkeeper as good as him at Liverpool. I was a little bit too young to remember Bruce Lee's glory days. So, yeah, I mean, Alisson for me is the best goalkeeper in the world. He's won, within 1 year at Liverpool, he won the Champions League, finished second in the Premier League with the best defensive record, 97 points. Golden Glove winner in the Copa America, Golden Glove winner in the Champions League. You'd struggle to argue a goalkeeper who's better than him at the moment. Broke the mould, really, because Liverpool had never spent. I mean, the Liverpool started to spend the big money, didn't they, when they brought Van Dijk in, and then obviously following that summer there was Fabinho and Naby Keita, and then Alisson, who was a £65 million world's most expensive goalkeeper of all time at the time. Liverpool had never done that before, and he was the first time that they'd really spent, record-breaking sums on a goalkeeper, and he's justified that and paid them back already, you'd argue. So you could certainly argue his case in terms of era-defining players at Liverpool. Certainly in terms of goalkeepers, he's the best one that I've seen in Anfield.
Well, I'm going to cheat slightly because of how this discussion's gone. I think we can allow ourselves two players here, and the one who's the symbol of the decade and the progress Liverpool have made, and I guess the one who really emphasises the difference between how the decade started and how it finished. I think it's got to be Van Dijk, hasn't it? We've got to give him that kind of symbolic award, and he's almost the beacon of where Liverpool could go and how much more could happen under FSG in the years to come. But then someone who kind of really takes us back into the start of the 2010s. Is it Coutinho? Is it Henderson? They're probably my two prime candidates in that respect. Who would you be going for?
I think I'd go for Henderson just because his story has kind of mirrored Liverpool's own over the last 10 years. When you think of his initial struggles when he came into the club, and some people thought that he wasn't going to cut it, and he even said recently, didn't he, that Luis Suarez used to give him all kinds of stick in training because he'd do certain things that Suarez didn't like, and Henderson himself questioned whether he deserved to be at the club, and he's knuckled down, stuck to it, improved, become a leader of the team, captain, European Cup winning captain, which you don't say lightly. So I think in terms of the transformative effect and so on, I think you'd have to go with Van Dijk. But in terms of just the actual story, then I'd go with Henderson over Coutinho.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that. European Cup winning captain, that's good enough for me. So congratulations to Jordan Henderson, man of the decade, and Virgil Van Dijk, man of the moment, and perhaps the future. And just 6 great candidates there. I think it all just shows how much has happened this decade and how exciting the potential is for the future, given 5 of them are still there and at the peak of their powers. So we will leave it there. And as I say, come and have a look at all the end of decade content that's already on the Echo website. Plenty more to get your teeth stuck into. So thank you very much.